For me, the best thing about this morning was that we know it deep down. This is a vocation we're in. We teach because we love it, and it just brings some of that sort of idealism, that philosophy back, and we know that this is the way forwards, and this is how we can improve, and we want to improve. We want to be better practitioners.
The end of the morning on day one of a 2-day coaching training workshop led by Mike Hughes, one of the best-known coaching trainers in education in the UK. The 65 people are from all levels of teaching, from all kinds of schools in the West Midlands region. A packed house is not unusual on these occasions. Mike Hughes is fully booked for months ahead.
I think what I'm trying to do is to invite people or challenge people to consider how effective their current professional development provision is. So how effective are your inset days? Do people go away after an inset day and change their practice and sustain that change?
Having been a widely practiced technique for many years in industry and business, coaching is now catching on in schools. It's seen by its followers as a highly effective way of driving up standards.
I'm just sowing seeds and suggesting that maybe the current model of professional development is quite a limited one. The other thing that I'm trying to do is to make some suggestions, is to provide people with some information, with some tools, with some techniques to say, okay, coaching's an option. The idea that you can package everything into a neat kind of coaching session doesn't work for me. That said, you've got to know the rules, if you like, in order to be able to adapt them and adopt them to particular circumstances. And what I want to do is I want to share with you a framework that you could use as a template for a coaching session. Many people find it helpful. It's called the GROW model. GROW model: goal, reality, options, what next? What we're really doing when we're trying to help somebody help themselves is helping people to identify where they are, helping people to identify where they would like to be, and helping them identify how they're going to get there.
Coaching training draws on a well-established body of models, techniques and procedures. There is some lecturing from the front, but not much. Mostly, the emphasis is on activities that work towards coaching's crucial aim. It should end up as a kind of self-help activity that can be taken away from here by teachers and developed by themselves in their schools.
The responsibility and the control, if you like, lie with the individual. It's not a process that's done to people where the control and the power and the influence lie with the coach. The coach is a helper, not an enabler, not a forcer. For me, it lies at the essence of everything that coaching is about. Coaching is done by people. They own the process. They're the person in charge. If coaching is a non-judgmental process, the goal must belong to the person being coached. What would you like to talk about today? I'd like to talk about X, Y, and Z. And even though you're thinking, no, you're missing the point, you need to be talking about A, B, and C, it's their goal, not yours. The vast majority of schools and teachers are good, very good, even excellent, and still we're being asked to improve. And I'm unconvinced that we're going to improve further simply by telling teachers.
Wendham High School in Norfolk launched a coaching programme 2 months ago. It's being developed by teachers trained at the Mike Hughes workshop. Mike has recommended a whole school approach, with groups working in trios, observing, reviewing and developing the skills of the coaches. Jenny Lincoln, assistant head, is going to be coached in this session, and surprisingly perhaps, by a history teacher, David Bartram. AST Jane Holland will be observing. It's close to the lunch break, and the three of them meet to set up the aims of the exercise. David will be coaching, Jane will be observing, and the issue is a problem Jenny has identified with her Year 10 drama group.
One of the things I think I intimated kind of in the corridor was that I was having some difficulties with a particular Year 10 group, because I started here in September of last year as a new teacher to this school, and as assistant head teacher. So I just haven't been able to establish, I don't think, a rapport with them. This is a GCSE group, and I've not really encountered this in this kind of way before, and so I felt that throughout the autumn term, I've really it's been kind of like a roller coaster. Some lessons have been fine, some lessons have been like, I felt quite disappointed with the lessons. And part of it, I think, if I'm being really honest, is that my teaching, in terms of being an assistant head, my teaching has almost become, dare I say it, kind of sideline. And I feel sometimes that I've not really been focusing, and then when the lesson hasn't gone the way I wanted it, I've ended up sort of sitting the class down and ranting and raving, without really thinking that actually I'm not really taking account of the mix in the group.
Right, okay. Yeah, it's an issue that I think a lot of us have with individual groups at various stages, and we can't quite put our finger on exactly why it is. Why is it this group? Is it me? Is it them? I
do think individually the students are great, and parents' evenings, they've come along with their parents, and I get on fine with them. But as a group, the group dynamic is quite difficult. So I kind of came into that, and it's come kind of like really large in my opinion about this particular class, and I've got a bit of a hang-up about it. I mean, sometimes I actually feel when I go in the classroom, I feel their hostility towards me, and I know that, particularly in the autumn term, less so now, that when I walk into the classroom, I actually have to sort of psych myself up to teach them. And I haven't felt like that for a long time. It makes you kind of feel a bit incompetent. You think, oh my God, I'm supposed to be an assistant head teacher.
You're supposed to be good.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be good. Yeah, actually, sure. David, I am. There are times I've walked out and I have wanted to. I've got quite upset by the situation. I'm used to GCSE groups, not for developing good relationships, and that's really, I think, what I want you to look at is the way I relate to them and the kind of environment that I create.
Fast, quickly, fast. That bump into people and slow it right down. Shoot! No laughing. Focus. Right, stop. Year 10, stop. When I'm frightened, I don't walk around with a great big grin on my face. So I'm going to give you a minute just to rehearse it by yourselves, and I mean by yourselves. Mark it for a sign. Listen how strong I'm. Mark it for a sign of the devil. The devil has come among us. How's the devil show his face? It is a sin to conjure with the dead. That's what I want it done like, please. Sonia, how are you getting on? You need to sort of stand your body up, don't you? Get quite sort of strong. And keep your... Go on then, have a go.
Mark it for the sign of the devil. The devil has come.
Right, eyes up, looking heavenward.
The devil has come.
It's individual work, folks. Spread it right out.
It is the sin to come to.
Right, keep strong legs. So keep it neutral.
The devil has come among us.
Yeah, okay. Mark it for a sign.
Mark it for the sign of the devil. The devil has come among us. How does the devil show his face? It's a sin to conjure with the dead.
Well done. Be a bit confident.
Mark it the sign of the devil. The devil has come among us. How does the devil show his face? It's a sin to conjure with the dead.
Not bad at all. Well done. The words are difficult, okay? You'll find that when you come to learn the text. Shh. And stop. Hold it. Right, we're going to do it all together. Come a bit closer. Right. We're going to lose a line, I think. No, we'll keep it. We'll keep it. Mark it for a sign of the devil. The devil has come among us. How does the devil show his face? It is a sin to conjure with the dead. Yep, and we're looking around. We're drawing us all in.
The third stage of the process is a review, with David coaching Jenny.
I've known you for 9 months since you joined the school. I don't find you remotely aggressive, and my impression is that people don't find you remotely aggressive, which has very negative connotations, but you are very energetic, and it's clear. I mean, that was an obvious observation from today's lesson. You are well and truly up for this. This is, every lesson counts, and this is something that I'm really passionate about. And but people perhaps show their passion or show their interest or show their enthusiasm in different ways.
When you are kind of trying to get that feeling, that atmosphere, and it's so important, that it's quite a tall order, and it's my manner, I think, can bring people's defences up maybe.
It's the only lesson I've ever seen, of course, and therefore I don't know on a scale of 1 to 10 how irritated you got in today's lesson. But I mean, how does your irritation sort of manifest itself?
I think it's where I just go into the glaring mode.
Which is particularly scary, may I say.
Scary. I do that a lot. Or I end up nagging. And I absolutely hate when I hear myself nagging. I sometimes say to him, "You're turning me into a nag." And I do sort of stop and say it to me. And they weren't today. Today I thought they were okay, they were fine.
What became apparent to me was the speed with which you say things.
Yeah, I'm fast, yeah.
Not only necessarily a sentence takes, X number of seconds, but then the speed with which the next sentence comes. That sort of issue I was sort of thinking about as I was looking at it. I've written it down, and I've got to be honest, it's not an original thought of mine. I was talking to Jane whilst we were watching the lesson, and she talked about this idea of thinking time, because at one point in particular it seemed to me was a possible issue. Have you discussed it with them?
Yes, I have. But I think what I do, David, is I rant. I end up getting so cross. I just launch like an Exocet, and then that just changes the whole atmosphere. I know what you're saying, and I think that's a good point, because I think to sit down and have more of a kind of calm conversation, rather than what I tend to do, I tend to get quite het up. And then I know what exactly that does. They close down, she's ranting, and nothing can come from that. So it's just me letting off steam and losing the plot. And really, I think you'll say, I need to have a rational conversation with them. And because I don't like it, because what happens, if I do lose my temper and get cross and everything, it changes the atmosphere. And I have done that. I had to stop the lesson. I said, look what you've done. And it's like, in a way, I'm having a temper tantrum.
Shutters go down,
yeah.
For yourself, but also from them
and
as well.
it makes me, I don't feel, if I want to move around and be like I am, it makes it very difficult if you've just had a rant and everything. Well, you know what it's like, isn't it? The class atmosphere changed, and you feel really disappointed.
And there's nowhere for you to go then either.
No.
So once you've got into that position, you're stuck. How do you sort of redeem yourself from that sort of very negative setup, really?
And I think, I don't know if I'm just imagining this, I'm being paranoid, but I'm sure I once was coming out of Southall and I heard one of them say, I think she hates us.
That's interesting.
And I think, yeah.
Do you?
No, of course I don't, no.
No, and that's the point. So there's a perception, perhaps,
Well, I don't
for whatever reason. And maybe that's a barrier that needs to be addressed and broken down.
I might just sit down and I might get them to evaluate me as a classroom teacher. I might get them to say to me what they think my lessons are like, how I engage with them, what they don't like about my lessons, and why.
So in other words, one thing in the very short term that you can begin to do is address the root issue, which is the mismatch perhaps between where you are and where a lot of them appear to be. At least in your mind, there's a bit of a mismatch with where you would want them to be and where they currently are. So in the short term, actually address that.
Yeah, I think that's the way forward.
One of the great strengths of working in groups of 3 is the ability to help the coach improve their coaching skills.
What it is, only the second time that I've had this sort of role with another member of staff, was I any good?
Well.
As a coach, how did I do?
Well, I'd sort of really like to start off by saying that, I've been through this process a couple of times already, but again, it's been really informative and useful for me in a purely selfish way, certainly in terms of observing a lesson and in observing you doing the coaching session. I thought there were lots of really interesting points that came out of the whole discussion. But I'm going to kick off with a sort of pretty predictable question for you, David. I mean, did you think that was a successful coaching session?
Well, I enjoyed the process because I enjoy discussing issues involving teaching.
I felt you were very clear in sort of getting Jenny to articulate what her sort of main aims were behind the whole process, in terms of looking at what was to be gained from the observation and then the coaching session. Do you feel that after having gone through that process, do you feel that you did achieve that objective?
Jenny it appears to me, has walked away with one concrete thing that she is going to do, yes, which isn't going to solve the problem, but it's going to begin to address the problem, which is talk to them about it. Right. Talk to them about me as the teacher, talk to them about them as the students. And, between you and me, if it was me, I think that's what I would be doing. So it's not that she's ended up doing something that I suggested, because I didn't suggest it. I think I half suggested it. but it's for Jenny to decide whether it's what she wants to do, and I get the impression that that's the case. I honestly believe, from my tentative sort of introductions to coaching, that it could be the one thing that may well open up the culture of the school, that people being in your lessons won't be seen as a threatening thing where people are making judgments on others, and in fact what it will be an opportunity to literally get to know your colleagues more, pick up ideas for your own teaching, and also be a vehicle through which other people can improve their own practice. So I'm very enthusiastic about it.
And it does make you reflect on what you're doing. Like today here, when I was chatting to David and he was making me think about my role within that group, I mean, I realised how much my personality has an impact on young people.
Coaching also works as a very powerful support for leadership. What follows is a reconstruction of a real-life case.
My first year of headship I really enjoyed because I hadn't got a clue if I was doing the right thing or the wrong thing. I just enjoyed being there. It was great. The second year was a really dark time for me. I could see that things weren't going right, and I felt that the way things had to go, the direction that they had to go in, was going to be just too hard. It got to the point where I thought it was all down to me, that I was damaging the school. It was a very stressful time for me. I was going to be ill, and frankly, coaching helped me not go there. I started as head in April. There had been 2 deputies. One was off long-term sick, and the other had resigned in a huff shortly before. They had had an Ofsted in March, and if I'm honest, and as the ex-head told me later on, they had simply wanted to keep the staff sweet during the Ofsted. So they had rushed people up onto the senior team. It was a lovely place to be, but it was like the Brigadoon of secondary schools in the area. It didn't seem to have any relation to other schools in the borough or nationally. It was as though they just sort of pulled up the drawbridge and sealed themselves off. It was a bit like going back in time about 15 or 20 years. I inherited a very interesting senior team. They had all been in the school at least 20 years. Some of them had been there over 30 years. The team had been there so long that they were not prepared to challenge the staff. They didn't feel comfortable holding anyone to account. So I think the problem started at both ends of the spectrum, really, the classroom teacher and me. I wasn't taking time to be reflective enough, to be strategic, but then I hadn't been trained to do that either. People were very demotivated and they didn't want to change. They would say, sod it, what's the point? Then I got our results and I was very emotionally upset. I felt that I must be doing something wrong, and I was definitely on the point of resigning.
What with feeling unwell, being close to packing in her job, and the disastrous exam results, she turned in desperation to a professional coach.
I was looking for somebody to help us, the senior team, be more effective leaders. I'd read a bit about coaching, but this convinced me. He said that in some schools there had been a real reluctance to take on anything that had had a business model, but I said that didn't bother me. I thought there was something very refreshing about having a professional dialogue. And there must be management and leadership issues that cut right across the professions.
In the coaching sessions, they tease out problematic behaviours in the management team, like lack of honesty, trust, mutual support and strategic thinking.
I think I'd like to feel that all the effort that people are putting in is actually getting us somewhere.
Okay, it's back to that issue we've talked about before about people taking responsibility for themselves and being more truly accountable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, talk to me a little bit then about your current frustrations within the team about these issues as you see them, Fran.
Well, within the senior team, I mean, that there's a problem with nearly everyone in there, really, but predominantly with one particular. Brian. Brian, I feel, well, for one thing, I feel that he's lost the respect of the rest of the team. Most of our work was day-to-day firefighting. Nearly everyone in the school was working one level below the level that they should have been working at. Problems were being passed up by classroom teachers before they'd even had an attempt at exploring any strategies.
Does the team in the generality act as Mr. and Ms. Fix-Its, sorting things out for people and not being strategic enough? Is that how things are?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And what about you? I mean, do you think you model that kind of behaviour yourself? I mean, are you a Ms. Fix-It for the school, or do you try and stand back a bit and take more of a strategic overview?
Oh, that's interesting. No, well, I suppose what I'm doing is the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we need to do some.
Thought of that. But no, but things, people are coming to me with things, and I am partly because I don't feel the confidence in the people around me that I see them not fixing things, or rather. Yes.
I'm interested in something you said earlier, though. If I just explore that with you, you were suggesting that is what you like, and you said something about because I don't trust the people around me to do what I want. I think you said something like that.
Yeah.
Let's try and explore that a little bit about what you would like the people around you to be able to do. How would you like to see them behaving?
I think I'd like them to take more responsibility for the problems that they've actually got before passing them on, which is what's happening at the moment.
And that's at middle leader level, up to the leadership team?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There were lots of other things that came out of the conversations with my coach. Like, I had been talking to the wrong people about the wrong things. The people I'd been talking to weren't prepared to challenge. They were uncomfortable with holding people to account. So all I was getting from them was appeasement. And you won't get quality unless you challenge people.
Before next time then, Fran, let's keep it very simple and focused, because the issue for me has always been that, do you remember that phrase we used 2 or 3 sessions ago about thinking strategically and acting tactically? I'm not so sure that you're still thinking as strategically as you might. So maybe between now and the next time, all we work on is having you give yourself feedback about Brian.
Yeah.
So that you just look very closely at how you're responding to him, how he's responding to other people, and just see whether there's a pattern in that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That would be a useful way to go, and then we can think about whether there is a pattern that's getting in the way, which we could of course then use when we're working with the team as a whole.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. No, that'd be great.
That sounds all right, doesn't it?
Over the 2 years, my coach has helped me unpick a number of management issues. Like, there was one particular block I couldn't get through. I couldn't understand the emotional aspect of why several people in my team couldn't engage in the way I wanted them to.
Okay, Fran, we agreed last time that we were just going to focus in on Brian and for you just to see just how he is operating in the school, how he's relating to you and the rest of staff. I'm really intrigued to find out what you've noticed.
Well, the main thing I've noticed really is that there's an awful lot of avoidance there.
Have there been people that he's avoided confronting over certain issues?
Oh, absolutely. He avoids confronting just about everybody, and it is causing a sort of, I think he is sort of causing a blockage within the sort of team as a whole.
Are you saying that as a result of him not challenging, if
Yes.
you will, avoiding confrontation, people are kind of giving him space and not doing it themselves.
Yeah.
It becomes infectious, as I said, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's exactly what's happening, yes. Yeah.
This is interesting. Do you know what it's reminding me of? It's reminding me of that conversation we had a little while ago about the stuff that you're doing with your Key Stage 3 kids on emotional literacy.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because if you think about it, what we're talking about here is levels of emotional literacy within the adult domain. And what I guess I'm thinking is, if what you're doing at Key Stage 3 with the kids is worth its salt, it pretty ought to be worth it doing with your leadership team, hadn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, track it back. What we're trying to do is to create a situation where you are running a school which trades in honesty, where people say what they feel. When things aren't working out, they say it. Where things are not working out for a member of staff in a classroom, you want them to come and seek help.
Yeah.
You don't want them to say, no problem. Now, if Brian's modelling the no problem approach, that can be quite destructive, can't it, for the kind of school you want?
Yeah. Another technique he used was to get me to put myself into other people's shoes. He helped me turn the picture round and see things from another point of view. Another thing about coaching is that it brings things out from you. And although there are things that I'm not necessarily good at, I think I do have compassion for people and I can empathise. And coaching isn't about saying somebody else has got a good idea, so you better use it. It's about using the skills and knowledge that you have yourself.
But the big question I need to ask you, because of what you said earlier, is do you feel comfortable about talking about this whole notion of the emotionally literate school?
Personally, yes.
Yeah,
I'm aware that there is going to be resistance
Right.
from within the
Oh,
team
there
to
will
an
be.
extent,
Yeah.
and I feel a little apprehensive about that.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
feel quite sort of.
You're up for it.
I'm up for it. Yeah.
Well,
Yes,
the
definitely.
important thing, I think, is that you give that impression.
With the coaching, what has happened is that I now do believe that I am the right head for the school. Interestingly, those who were most critical of me in my darkest moments over the last 3 or 4 years have turned out to be my sort of staunchest allies when it comes to driving our agenda, which is the raising of achievement.